Wow. Hi, seventh grade. We are going to do a review for chapter 21 for your quiz. This will happen depending on which class, the girls or the boys. We will have a live class. So this is going to be in addition to the live class. We'll do a review live. And then this is also going to be a review for you. All right, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to have your handouts with you. If you don't, pause it and print it out if you need to or whatever and get it and come back. And we're going to go through it. And I just want to clarify, I read your answers that you sent when you turned in your handouts, and I just want to clarify some things that a few of you put. Okay, so let's go start with number one. What happened in John 6? Okay, many of you mentioned the two miracles, the feeding of the 5,000, the multiplication of the loaves and the fish, but didn't put in the bulk of what happens after that in John 6. It's a very long chapter of John's gospel, but it's important that you know that in John 6 is when Jesus says, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you will not have life within you. So John 6, make sure you know that it's called the Bread of Life Discourse. I don't need to write that down. So Bread of Life Discourse, John 6. Let me back up. On your handout, if you don't have any of these, fill this in because you're going to use this to then study. Okay, so if you already have that in John 6, awesome. For number one, if you don't, add it in. Okay. Okay, so moving on. So that's number one. Hopefully that's complete. I think I wanted to say one more thing. That he says he is the bread of life in John 6, and that he says, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you will not have life within you. So we see here the real explanation of what the Eucharist is. That's the heart of John 6. Okay. Moving on to number two. Was Jesus talking figuratively about eating his flesh, his body, and blood? No. So let me just make sure you guys understand that figuratively means he's just saying, oh, it's sort of like my flesh and blood. No, he's not talking figuratively. He's talking literally. So you have either figuratively or literally. With this, he is talking literally in a literal sense, flesh and blood. Okay. So number three, what was their response? What did Jesus do when they started to walk away? Did he run after them? Now, the reason I put this right after number two is to see, okay, if he was talking figuratively, if he was saying, oh, I mean, guys, wait, come back. That's not what I meant. We see that he is talking literally. We can see that he's talking literally because he doesn't chase after them. They were horrified. They did not know what to make of this, but and some of them left, right? So what did Jesus do? Did he run after them? No, he let them go. Okay. So hopefully you understand that progression, right? If he was not talking literally, but they thought he was talking literally, he would have stopped them and clarified it to them, say, no, come back. But that's not what happened. Okay. It's just one of the ways that we know that he was actually talking literally. Also his repetition, right? He didn't just say it once, he said it several times. Okay, so moving on to number four. When did Jesus fulfill this promise? When did he fulfill it? At the Last Supper, right? That's the first Eucharist, when he celebrated his Passover supper with his apostles. Number six, what does the word Eucharist mean? It means Thanksgiving, literally. Number seven, what are some other words for the Eucharist? Sorry, I'm going fast with this. You guys should have all this filled out. So if you don't, you can just stop it and go back. Hopefully it's not too fast. Okay, so what are some other words for the Eucharist? That's on page 111, but the Lord's Supper, the Blessed Sacrament, the Sacrament of the Altar, the Bread of Life, Holy Communion, Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. You've probably heard most of these. I do want to stop here. Something that I did notice with you guys, that you're not capitalizing things like Eucharist or God or Jesus. Mass should be capitalized. Can you, let's see, where can you see on here? Okay. So, the Mass, Eucharist, God, Jesus, these should all be capitalized, okay? All right. That is, so number 7, when we're talking about other words for the Eucharist, Holy Communion should be capitalized. Holy Sacrifice of the Mass should be capitalized. Okay. All right. So why bread and wine? Because they were common and ordinary. Some of you didn't get this one 100% correct. This is in the book too. So I would really recommend you read the chapter, reread it. I'm sure you've most of you, I'm hoping you've read it, but even if you did reread it, it's going to be helpful. All this is from the chapter. Okay. Bread was their main food and wine was their primary drink. All right. So we see how Jesus took what was ordinary, what they needed for their physical body, and he transformed it because we need it for our souls, for our spiritual bodies, our spirits don't have bodies. Okay. All right. Number 9, transubstantiation. Now, I know a lot of this is review, but I just want to make sure that we do completely understand this mystery of faith. We'll get to mystery of faith. Transubstantiation is when the bread and wine changes in the body and blood of Jesus. Now, you guys, we've done this before, but bear with me. So this is before the consecration and after the consecration. The substance is bread. Whoa. All right, bread and wine. And it appears to be, right, bread and wine. Or hosts, unleavened bread, right? This is what you see. The appearance is what you see. That's what it is, the substance. After the consecration, however, the bread and wine become the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus. But then after, it still appears to be bread and wine. Okay. Little review on transubstantiation. Oh, again, trans means change, remember, and substance is substance. Substantiation is substance, so change of substance. Okay. So, all right, so then at every Mass, at the consecration, the priest says, let us proclaim this mystery of faith. Now, what is mystery of faith? Some of you just had it written down on the handout and some of you didn't have it at all. So I do want you to know what the mystery of faith is. What does that mean? It means this is a mystery, right? I mean, it appears to be bread and wine, but that's the mystery. This is our mystery. That's what makes it a mystery, is it appears to be bread and wine, but it is in fact Jesus himself, okay? So that's what that is. That's what the mystery of faith is. And we accept this as true because Jesus said so. We believe Jesus. He could multiply bread and fish. He can change bread and wine into his body and blood. Okay. So what does real presence mean? Real presence is that Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist. 11 is tabernacle. It's where the Eucharist is kept. It is special. It is solid, immovable. I think most of you guys probably know that one, right? Sacrilege. Okay, this is one that a lot of you put, which is correct, receiving the Eucharist unworthily. That is absolutely a sacrilege. I want you to know, though, that sacrilege is a bigger term. It can be profaning anything that is holy. So, but when we are talking in reference to the Eucharist, that it is receiving the Eucharist in a state of mortal sin. Now, and also you should know that a sacrilege in itself is a mortal sin, especially in regards to the Eucharist, okay? All right, moving right along. I might have different numbers on this one, but you guys can, I'm sure you can follow along, okay? All right, what does Saint Cyril of Jerusalem encourage us to do in regards to the Eucharist? Again, you can reread this. This is on page 111. It's beautiful. He says, even though your senses do not convince you, let your faith strengthen you, that you do not judge according to your taste. Okay, again, this is a mystery of faith. It's believing on faith. And remember, we can always ask for more faith. Remember what the apostles actually said, Lord, increase our faith. They prayed for an increase in faith. So we should pray for an increase in faith to really have a greater love and faith in the Eucharist, especially if we feel like we're lacking in our faith there. Okay, so how do we receive the Eucharist worthily? In a state of grace, which that means, hopefully you guys know, but when we say we're in a state of grace, we are saying that our souls are free from mortal sin, okay, so that we can actually receive sanctifying grace, that we have fasted for at least an hour from food and drink. You can have water and you can have medicine. Those are the exceptions. And that you are approaching the altar with faith. All right, that is, now I know you guys, when we've covered this before, you've asked different questions about, what if you accidentally eat something, can you receive the Eucharist, and that kind of thing. Hopefully we can cover those questions on our live class. So to answer that one, if you accidentally, let's say you are on your way, you're in your car and you eat a donut and then you realize, oh, we're going to Mass right now. Now, if you didn't know you were going to Mass, you can still receive the Eucharist. If you knew you were on your way to Mass and you just sort of forgot and you were like, well, I just really wanted that donut or the last bit of orange juice, right? Then you shouldn't receive if you have not fasted for a solid hour. Now, if you didn't know, you were, let's say, you were walking around a city with your family and you're on vacation and you had just eaten ice cream and you want to see this big, beautiful church in San Francisco or a city, and they're just starting Mass, you realize, your family says, oh, wow, this is amazing. Let's go sit down and go to daily Mass. In that situation, yes, you can receive the Eucharist because it was not an intention to not fast. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. All right, so, and then what are the effects of the Holy Eucharist? It's beautiful. It increases our love for Jesus, our relationship with him, takes away our venial sin, and it helps us to overcome sin. It helps us to fight temptation, gives us the grace to not commit those sins again. Okay. Two stories I want to quickly share with you. One is Saint Philip Neri. So one of the questions that I don't know if you guys have asked me, but how long after you receive communion does the Eucharist stay within you? And it's generally because after you receive the Eucharist, you should make a prayer of thanksgiving, right? It's a very special time. That's why you shouldn't leave Mass early. It's why you shouldn't receive the Eucharist and just walk out of Mass, because you have Jesus. This is a time when you have Jesus in you, and it's a very important and special and blessed time. And it's generally assumed that the Eucharistic species of bread remains for about 15 minutes after reception. So there's a story of St. Philip Neri. One day when he was celebrating Mass, a man received Holy Communion and left the church early. The man appeared to have no regard for the presence within him, and so Philip Neri decided to use this opportunity as a teaching moment. He sent 2 altar boys with lighted candles to follow the man outside of the church. After a while, walking through the streets of Rome, the man turned around to see the altar boys still following him. Confused, the man returned to church and asked Philip Neri why he sent the altar boys. Father Philip Neri at the time, right? Now he's saint, responded by saying, "We have to pay proper respect to our Lord, whom you are carrying away with you. Since you neglect to adore him, I sent 2 acolytes to take your place." The man was stunned by the response and resolved to be more aware of God's presence in the future. Okay. That's why we should definitely, that's when you can have a real heart-to-heart with Jesus, when he's right there within you, in your heart, right? All right, so the other, then I'll ask you a couple questions for the quiz to make sure that you're totally prepared. All right. Is Saint Anthony of Padua. This is a great story. I don't know if I've shared this with you. One day, a man in Padua mocked Saint Anthony for his belief in the real presence. This man had a donkey with him. Saint Anthony told him that even his donkey could recognize God's presence. The man laughed, but Saint Anthony gave him a challenge. Take your donkey home and do not feed it for 3 days. At the end of those days, bring him back into town. Saint Anthony would stand before the donkey holding the Blessed Sacrament. The donkey's owner would stand next to him holding some oats, and they would see who the donkey approached. When the day came, to everyone's surprise, except Saint Anthony's, the starving donkey ignored the oats and reverenced the Eucharist. Now, I've heard it that the donkey actually bowed down to the Eucharist. So, just beautiful stories. There's so many beautiful stories about the Eucharist. God is very, very generous and good to us that He would give us these miraculous stories, or the story of Lanciano in Buenos Aires, the stories of the I cannot think of the word I want to say right now. Eucharistic miracles, all these miracles really surrounding the Blessed Sacrament, just to show us His true presence. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys some yes or no questions, and then I'll give you the answer. So let's see if you know them. All right. Do we bring bread and wine up to the priest at the offertory? The answer to that is yes. All right. As soon as the priest says, "This is my body," does the bread become Jesus? Yes, at that very moment. That is the heart of the words of consecration. All right. Does the consecrated host look like Jesus? No. When the priest says, "This is the chalice of my blood," does the wine become Jesus? Yes. Do our senses of sight and taste tell us who is really present in the Eucharist? No. Because what do our senses and our taste tell us? That it's bread and wine. Okay. Does faith in Jesus's words tell us who is really present in the Eucharist? Yes. Remember, going back to John 6, Jesus's words, right? Do the body and blood of Jesus stop being present as soon as Mass ends? No. And where is that kept? Where are the reserved hosts kept? They're kept in the tabernacle. Good. Okay. Is the host in the tabernacle still Jesus's body, blood, soul, and divinity? Yes, definitely. Is it anything less? No. It's the exact same presence that we receive at Mass. Okay. Okay. And those are actually, and I know we probably talked about this, those are actually taken to the sick or the dying or those who cannot attend Mass for whatever reason, which is us right now, I know. That's okay, but I don't want to go into that tangent about spiritual communion. Okay. Do we need the Eucharist to have life and health in our souls? Yes, we need the Eucharist to have life and health in our souls. Do we continue to honor Jesus while He is present in the tabernacle? Yes, absolutely. We should kneel down before the tabernacle when Jesus is present. And how do you know if Jesus is present in the tabernacle? The vigil light. All right. Are there any requirements for when and how we may receive the Eucharist? Yes, of course. May we receive the Eucharist if we have a mortal sin on our souls? No. And if we do, that is called what? A sacrilege. Okay. All right. So you'll need to be able to define transubstantiation, real presence, tabernacle, and sacrilege. All right. So that is all for this review. Please email me or post comments underneath so other people can see them if you have any questions, but hopefully we will cover any of that in our live class. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys and praying for you. All right, God bless. Bye-bye.